They called us the soft ones in the galactic forums. Our skin bruised from mere pressure. Our bones snapped under forces that barely inconvenienced other species, and we died from wounds that would be considered minor scratches to a Corellian warrior. The galaxy's betting pools gave humanity a 0.003% survival rate when the Devourers finally reached our sector. What they didn't understand was that being fragile had taught us something the galaxy's apex predators never learned: how to turn weakness into the sharpest weapon of all. When you can't rely on claws, you learn to think. When you can't trust your hide to stop a blade, you learn to never let the blade reach you in the first place. And when every battle could be your last, you learn to make each one count in ways that echo across the stars. The galaxy stopped laughing when our first battle cry reached their sensors. It wasn't a roar of challenge or a howl of fury like they expected. It was something far more terrifying: the calm, calculated voice of Admiral Sarah Chun saying, "All ships, weapons free. Let's show them what happens when you corner a human." The Devourers had consumed 17 civilizations in their march toward Earth. They were about to learn why that number would never reach 18. The Galactic Council chambers had never hosted such unanimity in their 3,000-year history. Representatives from 47 different species sat in perfect agreement for once, their various forms of laughter creating a cacophony that echoed through the crystalline dome. At the center of their amusement stood Ambassador Helena Reeves, her slight human frame dwarfed by the massive beings surrounding her. "You cannot be serious," wheezed Ambassador Vextar, his 4 lungs working overtime to push air through his vocal chambers. The Thackeray delegation found the proposal so absurd that their natural bioluminescence flickered in patterns that roughly translated to uncontrollable mirth. "Your species wishes to join the Galactic Defense Initiative? The same species that requires pressurized environments to survive in space." Helena maintained her composure, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the podium. 3 months of preparation had led to this moment, and she knew humanity's future hung in the balance. The Devourers were coming. That much was certain. Long-range scouts had detected their massive bioships consuming star systems in the Outer Rim, leaving nothing but empty void in their wake. Every civilization in their path had fallen, absorbed into the growing mass of the Devourer fleet. "Honored delegates," Helena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation matrix, "humanity understands that we may appear limited compared to your mighty civilizations. However, we believe our unique perspective and capabilities could contribute significantly to the defense effort." This statement prompted fresh waves of laughter. Ambassador Kixnoth of the Corellian Empire rose to his full 12 feet, his obsidian carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights. "Unique perspective?" His voice rumbled like shifting mountains. "Your people die from a fall that wouldn't scratch a Corellian infant. Your lifespans are measured in decades, not millennia. What could you possibly offer that we cannot provide ourselves?" The question wasn't meant to be cruel, Helena realized. These beings genuinely couldn't comprehend how humanity might contribute to a galactic war effort. To them, humans were curiosities, a young species that had somehow managed to achieve faster-than-light travel despite their obvious physical limitations. They viewed humans the way humans might view particularly clever dolphins that had learned to use tools. Helena activated her portable display unit, projecting holographic data into the chamber center. "What we offer is adaptability, delegates. In the past century, humanity has faced extinction-level events 17 times. Each time, we've not only survived, but emerged stronger. We've learned to thrive in environments that would kill other species, to find solutions where others see only problems. 17 extinction events." Ambassador Zurgoth of the Silicon Collective processed this information with mechanical precision. "Our records indicate only 12 major catastrophes in human history." "Your records focus on natural disasters and wars," Helena replied. "I'm including events most species wouldn't consider survivable. Global pandemics that we conquered through pure determination and scientific innovation, asteroid impacts that we turned into mining opportunities, climate changes that we adapted to rather than fled from. Each challenge taught us something new about survival. The chamber's atmosphere began to shift slightly. While the laughter hadn't completely died down, several delegates were now studying Helena's data projections with genuine interest. The ethereal representative, a being of pure energy contained within a specially designed suit, spoke with a voice like singing crystals. These adaptation rates are unusual, it admitted. Most species would have sought new worlds rather than modify their existing environment so extensively. When our sun began showing signs of instability, we didn't flee. We developed stellar engineering techniques to stabilize it. Ambassador Karath of the Razorwing Legion, a species known for their military prowess, leaned forward with interest. Your military records indicate consistent victories despite technological and numerical disadvantages. How do you explain this? Helena smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. This was the opening she'd been waiting for. Because we fight differently, Ambassador Karath. Most species in the galaxy have evolved as either predators or prey. You fight with the instincts of your evolution. Predators seek to overpower. Prey seeks to escape. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We don't seek quick victories or easy escapes. We pursue our goals relentlessly, adapting our tactics constantly until we achieve success. She gestured to a new hologram showing historical battle analyses. In every major conflict, human forces have demonstrated the ability to learn and counter enemy strategies faster than any other known species. We don't just adapt to new weapons. We anticipate them. We don't just respond to tactics. We evolve beyond them. The laughter in the chamber had died completely now. Several delegates were exchanging glances, their universal translators working overtime to convey the nuanced discussions happening in dozens of different languages. These claims require verification, Ambassador Vextar stated, though his tone had lost its earlier mockery. The Devourers have consumed 17 civilizations, including species far more physically capable than humans. What makes you believe your tactics would succeed where others have failed? Helena's expression grew serious. Because every species the Devourers have faced has tried to match them strength for strength, ship for ship. They've fought the kind of war the Devourers are designed to win: direct consumption and assimilation. Humanity proposes a different approach entirely. She activated a new projection showing detailed scans of Devourer bioships. These creatures are incredibly powerful, but they're also incredibly specialized. They've evolved to consume and convert matter into more of themselves. This makes them nearly unstoppable in direct combat, but it also makes them predictable. They can only respond to threats in ways their evolution has programmed them to handle. You're suggesting we exploit their evolutionary limitations, the ethereal representative observed. An interesting concept, but how would you implement such a strategy? By fighting a war they're not designed to understand, Helena replied. Humans have a saying, if you can't win the game, change the rules. We propose doing exactly that. Ambassador Kixnatha's massive form shifted, his interest clearly piqued. Elaborate. Helena took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. The Devourers consume civilizations by overwhelming them with superior numbers and firepower. They expect their enemies to meet them in space, where their bioships have every advantage. Instead, we propose letting them come to us, but not in the way they expect. The projection changed to show a complex, three-dimensional battle space. Human military doctrine includes extensive study of asymmetric warfare, conflicts where opposing forces use different strategies and tactics. We've developed techniques for turning an enemy's strengths against them, for making superior firepower irrelevant through superior positioning and timing. You would hide from them? Ambassador Karatha's voice carried a note of disdain that even the universal translator couldn't disguise. We would hunt them, Helena corrected. Humans are persistence hunters, remember? We don't ambush our prey for a quick kill. We pursue it until it exhausts itself. The Devourers expect civilizations to exhaust themselves in desperate last stands. We propose doing the opposite, making them exhaust themselves trying to catch us. She gestured to tactical displays showing hit-and-run scenarios, supply line disruptions, and psychological warfare techniques. Every bioship they send to chase our forces is a bioship, not consuming planets. Every resource they spend trying to pin down our fleets is a resource not being used to grow their numbers. We turn their greatest strength, their ability to grow through consumption, into their greatest weakness. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. Finally, Ambassador Zurgoth spoke with mechanical precision. Your proposal has theoretical merit. However, implementation would require unprecedented cooperation between species with vastly different military doctrines and capabilities. That's exactly what we're offering, Helena replied. Humans don't just excel at adapting to new challenges. We excel at helping others adapt as well. Our history is filled with examples of diverse groups coming together to achieve goals none could accomplish alone. She activated a final projection showing human diplomatic and alliance structures throughout history. We've spent our entire existence learning how to unite different peoples, different cultures, different ways of thinking into effective coalitions. If you give us the chance, we can teach the galaxy how to fight as one people instead of 47 different ones. The silence stretched on for long minutes. Finally, Ambassador Vextar spoke, his voice thoughtful. The Devourer advanced scouts will reach the outer systems within 6 months. If your species is to contribute to the defense effort, we would need to see results quickly. We're prepared to demonstrate immediately, Helena replied. Humanity has already begun developing new technologies and tactics specifically for this threat. We're not asking you to trust us blindly. We're asking you to let us prove ourselves. Ambassador Kixnoth rose again, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. The Cruellian Empire has fought the Devourers before. We lost 3 battle fleets and barely escaped with our core worlds intact. If humans believe they can succeed where we failed. He paused, considering. We are willing to observe your methods. One by one, other delegates began voicing tentative agreement. Not enthusiasm. Not yet, but at least a willingness to see what humanity might accomplish. The ethereal representative was the last to speak. The probability calculations are intriguing, it admitted. Your species' survival rate in impossible situations does suggest capabilities we may have overlooked. Very well. Humanity will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Defense Initiative, with full membership contingent on demonstrated effectiveness against Devourer forces. Helena felt a wave of relief wash over her, though she kept her expression neutral. This was only the first step. Convincing the galaxy to let humanity join the fight had been the easy part. Now, they had to actually prove they could make a difference against an enemy that had never been defeated. As the session concluded and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Ambassador Koroth approached Helena directly. The massive warrior studied her with compound eyes that missed nothing. Human, he said quietly, I hope your species understands the magnitude of what you have undertaken. The Devourers do not simply defeat their enemies. They erase them completely. There are no second chances, no opportunities to learn from failure. If your methods prove ineffective, then humanity will die learning something new, Helena replied without hesitation. That's what we do, Ambassador. We learn, we adapt, and we never stop fighting. Koroth studied her for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated your species after all. As Helena left the chamber, she activated her personal communicator to send a message back to Earth. The message was simple, but carried enormous weight. Permission granted. Initiate Project Persistence. Across the galaxy, humanity began preparing for a war unlike any they had ever fought. A war where their greatest weakness would become their most powerful weapon, and where the laughter of the galaxy would turn to something else entirely. Admiral Sarah Chun stood before the largest holographic display in human history, watching as real-time feeds from across the galaxy painted a picture of impending doom. The Devourer fleet had grown since their last intelligence update. What had been estimated as 3,000 bioships was now closer to 5,000, each one the size of a city and capable of consuming an entire world's biomass within days. They're accelerating, reported Commander Marcus Webb, Helena Reeves' military counterpart, and Chen's chief strategic advisor. Intelligence suggests they've detected our preparations. The consumption pattern has shifted from methodical to urgent. Chen nodded grimly. 3 months had passed since humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Defense Initiative, and every day brought new challenges. The other species weren't actively sabotaging human efforts, but their skepticism created constant friction. Resources were allocated reluctantly, information was shared grudgingly, and human strategic proposals were met with polite dismissal. Status report on project persistence? Chen asked, not taking her eyes off the tactical display. All phases proceeding on schedule, Webb replied, activating a series of subsidiary displays. The Phantom Fleet is 60% operational. Ghost Protocol training has been completed for 12,000 volunteers. The Hive network is showing promising results in preliminary tests, though some of our allies remain concerned about the psychological implications. Chun smiled at the understatement. The other species had been horrified when they learned about humanity's most audacious innovation, a neural linking system that allowed human crews to operate multiple vessels simultaneously while maintaining individual consciousness and decision-making ability. Where other species saw dangerous collective behavior, humans saw efficient resource utilization. The Cruellians still believe we're creating some sort of hive mind, Chen observed. They don't understand that humans have always been collaborative. We're just taking it to its logical conclusion. The observation was accurate, but understated the revolutionary nature of what humanity had achieved. Traditional space combat required crews of dozens or hundreds per vessel, limiting the number of ships any species could effectively deploy. Humans had solved this problem by developing a technology that allowed a single operator to control multiple vessels while maintaining full situational awareness across all platforms. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source: human video game culture. Generations of humans had grown up controlling multiple units simultaneously in real-time strategy games, developing cognitive abilities that other species couldn't match. What had started as entertainment had evolved into humanity's greatest military advantage. Incoming transmission from the Ethereal Collective, announced Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the fleet's communications officer. They're requesting immediate consultation on their defensive preparations. Chen gestured for the transmission to be routed to the main display. The ethereal representative appeared as a shifting pattern of lights within its containment suit, its form radiating the controlled energy patterns that served as its species' equivalent of agitation. Admiral Chun, the being began without preamble. Our deep space sensors have detected concerning developments in devourer behavior. They appear to be implementing new tactical formations specifically designed to counter human strategies. Chun felt a chill run down her spine. Explain. The display shifted to show long-range sensor data from the ethereal monitoring stations. The Devourer fleet had indeed changed its formation, but not in the way Chun had expected. Instead of the compact swarm they typically used for planetary consumption, the bioships had spread into a loose net spanning several light years. They're trying to prevent us from using hit-in, run tactics, Webb observed, studying the formation with professional interest. Wide formation means we can't concentrate fire on isolated groups, and the gaps between ships are too narrow for safe faster-than-light travel. It's more sophisticated than that, Chen realized, her tactical instincts processing the implications. Look at the spacing. It's designed to force any defending force into direct engagement. They've created a formation where evasion is impossible and retreat is blocked. The ethereal representative pulsed with what might have been approval. Precisely our assessment. The Devourers have clearly analyzed previous engagements and adapted their approach to neutralize human tactical advantages. Chun stared at the display for several long moments, her mind racing through possibilities. This was exactly what they had hoped to avoid, a direct confrontation where the Devourers' overwhelming numbers and firepower would decide the outcome. But perhaps, Commander Webb, she said slowly, pull up our psychological profiles on Devourer behavior patterns. Focus on learning adaptation and strategic evolution. Webb's fingers danced across his console, bringing up extensive files on Devourer psychology and behavior. Humanity had spent the past 3 months not just preparing for war, but studying their enemy in unprecedented detail. The other galactic species had shared their military intelligence readily enough, but humans had asked different questions. Here's what's interesting, Webb said as he highlighted key data points. The Devourers adapt quickly to tactical changes, but their learning pattern follows biological rather than technological models. They evolve responses the way biological organisms evolve resistance to diseases, gradually, systematically, but with significant time delays. Chen's eyes lit up, which means their current formation is a response to our original tactical proposals, not our actual capabilities. Exactly. They've prepared to counter the strategies we demonstrated during the war games with Cruellian forces. But Project Persistence wasn't included in those demonstrations. Chun activated her personal communicator, opening channels to every human fleet commander simultaneously. All units, implement Protocol 7 immediately. Operation Ghost Dance is now active. Across human space, carefully prepared plans shifted into motion. The phantom fleets that had been humanity's secret weapon began moving into position, their crews linked through neural networks that allowed unprecedented coordination. But, more importantly, they began executing the strategy that no other species had witnessed. Ethereal Collective, Chen addressed the waiting representative. Please inform all GDI members that humanity is implementing our final defensive preparations. We recommend all species maintain standard defensive positions around their core systems. Admiral, the ethereal being replied with what might have been confusion. Our sensor networks show no change in human fleet positions. Are you certain your preparations are proceeding? Chen smiled. Sensor contact with human forces in 3, 2. The holographic display exploded with new contacts as humanity's true fleet revealed itself. Where sensor sweeps had previously detected only standard defensive formations, hundreds of previously invisible vessels suddenly appeared throughout the galaxy. The Phantom Fleet wasn't just hidden. It had been operating in a completely different tactical framework. Stealth technology, the ethereal representative asked, its energy patterns shifting to indicate surprise. Something better, Chen replied. Distributed presence. Every ship you're now detecting has been operational for weeks, but below the threshold of normal sensor detection. Small vessels, minimal energy signatures, but networked into a collective intelligence system that allows them to operate as a single coordinated force. The implications became clear as the tactical display updated. Humanity hadn't built a traditional fleet to fight the Devourers. They had built a distributed intelligence network that happened to include weapons platforms. Each small vessel was weak individually, but connected to a collective system that could coordinate thousands of simultaneous actions. The Devourers adapted to fight human fleets, Webb explained as he highlighted the tactical advantages. But we're not using fleets in any traditional sense. We're using something closer to a distributed organism, one that can lose individual components without affecting overall capability. Chun activated another communication channel, this one broadcasting to the approaching Devourer forces. She knew they wouldn't understand the words, but they would understand the signal itself, a declaration of intent that would reach them in hours rather than days. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force. You have consumed 17 civilizations in your advance toward our space. You will not consume an 18th. We are not like the others you have faced. We are not apex predators trying to match your strength. We are not prey species seeking to escape your hunger. We are persistence hunters, and you have just entered our territory. The transmission cut off, leaving the chamber in silence. The ethereal representative's energy patterns had shifted to something resembling awe mixed with concern. Admiral, it said quietly, what you have described sounds remarkably similar to Devour biology, distributed intelligence, collective action, rapid adaptation to threats. Are you certain this approach will not make you more like them rather than less? Chen considered the question carefully. It was a fair concern, and one that had kept her awake for many nights during the preparation phase. The difference, she said finally, is choice. The Devourers consume because it's their nature. They can't conceive of any other way to exist. Humans cooperate because we choose to, and we can choose to stop cooperating at any time. To demonstrate her point, she activated the neural link briefly, allowing her consciousness to touch the collective awareness of the Phantom Fleet. For a moment, she experienced reality from thousands of perspectives simultaneously, sensors throughout the galaxy feeding data to a shared intelligence network that processed information faster than any individual mind could manage. But underneath the collective awareness, she could still feel her individual consciousness, her personal identity, her ability to make independent decisions. The network enhanced human capability without erasing human nature. The Devourers are a collective organism that happens to be made of separate entities, she explained as she disconnected from the link. Humans are separate entities who have chosen to act as a collective organism. The distinction matters. Webb highlighted new data on the tactical display as reports came in from across the galaxy. First phase deployment complete. All Phantom assets are in position and maintaining distributed coordination. Devourer advance elements will encounter our outer perimeter within 72 hours. Chen nodded, feeling the weight of humanity's gamble settling on her shoulders. They had committed everything to this strategy. If it failed, humanity wouldn't get a second chance to try a different approach. Signal to all allied fleets, she commanded. Maintain defensive positions, but do not engage Devourer forces until Phase 2 is complete. Repeat, do not engage until Phase 2 is complete. The ethereal representative pulsed with concern. Admiral, Phase 2 was not included in your strategic briefings to the GDI. What are you planning? Chen's smile was predatory. We're going to teach the Devourers something new about persistence hunting. Phase 1 was about becoming invisible. Phase 2 is about becoming inevitable. As if summoned by her words, new alerts began appearing on the display. Long-range sensors detected the first Devourer scouts entering the outer systems, their massive bioships moving with the confidence of predators who had never encountered effective resistance. They spread through space like a living tide, consuming asteroids and small planetoids to fuel their continued growth. What they didn't detect were the thousands of tiny human vessels that had been drifting in those systems for weeks, disguised as space debris and powered down to minimal signatures. The Phantom Fleet had been waiting, its crews sustained in neural link networks that allowed them to remain conscious and alert while their bodies rested in automated life support systems. Contact with Devourer advance elements in 30 seconds, Webb reported. All Phantom units report ready for engagement. Chen took a deep breath and opened the fleet-wide communication channel. Across the galaxy, thousands of human warriors connected to the neural network felt her presence touch their minds, not controlling them, but coordinating them, sharing her determination and resolve. All units, she said quietly, her voice carrying to every human vessel in space. Remember what we're fighting for. Not just our own survival, but proof that intelligence can triumph over instinct, that cooperation can overcome consumption, that humanity's greatest weakness can become its greatest strength. Execute Phase 2. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans decided to stop being underestimated. Throughout space, the Phantom Fleet began to move, its thousands of components acting with perfect coordination while maintaining individual initiative. The Devourers were about to face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before, one that could be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, that grew stronger through cooperation rather than consumption, and that had turned the art of war into something approaching poetry. The real battle was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what persistence hunting looked like on an interstellar scale. The first Devourer bioship to die had been consuming a minor asteroid field when humanity struck. The massive creature, easily the size of a terrestrial city, had been methodically breaking down rocky debris and converting it into additional biomass when what appeared to be space debris suddenly came alive around it. Captain Lisa Rodriguez felt the shared consciousness of her Phantom Squadron as they emerged from their months-long concealment. Through the neural link, she experienced the battle from 17 different perspectives simultaneously. Her own light cruiser and 16 drone vessels, each one controlled by a different member of her crew, while they remained physically aboard the primary ship. Devourer vessel is showing typical feeding behavior. Reported Ensign Park through the neural link, his consciousness operating 3 stealth fighters while his body remains safely in the cruiser's command center. Sensors indicate it hasn't detected our presence yet. Rodriguez smiled grimly as she coordinated the attack through the neural network. This was what the other species couldn't understand about human tactics. They weren't just fighting with ships, they were fighting with ideas. Each Phantom vessel was guided by human intelligence and creativity, making them unpredictable in ways that purely automated systems could never match. All units, initiate hunting Protocol Alpha, she commanded through the link. Remember, we're not trying to destroy this target. We're trying to teach it something. The attack began with surgical precision. The Phantom vessels, each one small enough to be dismissed as space debris by Devourer sensors, converged on the bioship from multiple vectors. But instead of conventional weapons fire, they deployed something far more insidious. Nanite payload delivered, reported Lieutenant Commander Singh as his drone vessel made contact with the bioship's outer membrane. Biological analysis programs are active and transmitting data. This was humanity's first innovation in anti-devourer warfare, information warfare on a biological level. Rather than simply trying to destroy the creatures, human forces had developed methods to study them in real time during combat. Every engagement became a research opportunity, every battle a chance to learn something new about their enemy. The Devourer bioship's response was immediate and predictable. Sensing foreign organisms on its surface, it began producing defensive antibodies while simultaneously trying to incorporate the nanites into its own biological systems. But the nanites had been designed specifically to resist incorporation while gathering detailed information about Devourer biology. Data stream is incredible, Singh reported with excitement. We're getting real-time information on their cellular structure, metabolic processes, neural networks, everything. The bioship is essentially performing an autopsy on itself, trying to understand what we've introduced. Through the neural link, Rodriguez felt the shared excitement of her crew as they gathered intelligence that no previous engagement with the Devourers had produced. But, more importantly, she felt the bioship's confusion through the sensor data. The creature couldn't understand what it was fighting. The human vessels were too small to be considered threats, but too active to be ignored. Phase 2, Rodriguez commanded. Initiate harassment pattern Sierra. The Phantom vessels began a coordinated dance around the bioship, never staying in one location long enough to be targeted, but constantly applying pressure at unexpected points. They fired precisely calibrated energy bursts, not enough to cause serious damage, but enough to trigger defensive responses that consumed the creature's resources. It's trying to adapt, Ensign Park observed as his fighters dodged tendrils that erupted from the bioship's surface. Neural activity is spiking in what appears to be learning centers. It's attempting to categorize us as a known threat type. This was exactly what Rodriguez had hoped for. Let it learn, she said with satisfaction. We want it to adapt. Singh, begin implementing pattern variations. The harassment attack shifted into something resembling an elaborate test. The Phantom vessels would present a specific threat pattern, wait for the bioship to adapt and respond, then immediately shift to a completely different pattern. Each adaptation the creature made was cataloged and countered, forcing it to constantly expend energy on defensive measures that became obsolete moments after implementation. Admiral Chun was right. Rodriguez mused as she watched the bioship's increasingly frantic attempts to categorize and respond to the human attack patterns. We're not fighting their strengths. We're fighting their learning process itself. After 30 minutes of sustained harassment, the bioship had exhausted its local energy reserves attempting to counter human tactics that changed faster than it could adapt. The creature began sending distress signals to other Devourer vessels, a reaction that Rodriguez had been specifically waiting for. Signal intercept complete, reported the communications specialist through the neural link. We've recorded the entire distress protocol, including what appears to be tactical data about our attack patterns. Rodriguez nodded with satisfaction. All units disengage and implement fade protocol. Time to disappear. The Phantom vessels scattered in 17 different directions, each one following a carefully planned route that would make tracking impossible. Within minutes, they had vanished from Devourer sensors as completely as if they had never existed. But they left behind something important: confusion. The bioship had survived the encounter, but it had learned something that would prove disastrous for Devourer strategy. It had learned that there were enemies who could attack without being effectively countered, who could vanish without being pursued, and who could gather intelligence without being detected. More importantly, it had transmitted that information to the rest of the Devourer fleet. Across the galaxy, similar encounters were taking place as hundreds of Phantom squadrons made contact with Devourer advance elements. Each engagement followed the same pattern: emerge from concealment, gather intelligence, confuse the enemy, and disappear. No single engagement caused significant damage, but collectively they achieved something unprecedented. They taught the Devourers to be afraid. Admiral Chun watched the tactical reports streaming in from across the galaxy, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and concern. The first phase of Operation Ghost Dance was proceeding exactly as planned. Human forces were making contact with Devourer elements throughout their advance zone, but none of the encounters were developing into the kind of large-scale battles that the aliens expected. Psychological impact assessment, she asked Commander Webb as she studied the growing database of Devourer responses. Fascinating, Webb replied, highlighting key data points on the holographic display. The Devourers are demonstrating what we can only describe as anxiety. They're expending increasing amounts of energy on defensive measures rather than focused consumption. Some bioships have actually stopped feeding entirely and are maintaining constant defensive postures. Chin smiled grimly. This was exactly the effect humanity had hoped to achieve. They're not sure what they're fighting, so they're preparing for everything. Classic overreaction to asymmetric warfare. It's more than that, Webb continued. The intelligence data we're gathering suggests that Devourer learning is more limited than we initially understood. They can adapt to specific threats very quickly, but they have difficulty processing threats that change faster than their adaptation cycle can handle. The implications were significant. The Devourers had evolved to learn from their consumption of other species, incorporating new biological knowledge into their own development. But they had never faced an enemy that could present new challenges faster than they could be integrated and countered. Status report on Phase 2 preparations? Chen asked. All Phantom fleets are in position for convergence operations, Webb reported. Ghost protocol training has been completed for 15,000 additional volunteers. The Hive network is operating at 93% efficiency across all human forces. Chen nodded, but her expression remained concerned. And our allies? Webb's expression darkened slightly. Mixed reactions. The Cruellians are impressed by our early results, but remain skeptical about our ability to maintain the campaign. The Ethereal Collective is concerned about the psychological implications of our neural linking technology. Several species are requesting more detailed information about our strategic planning, which we're not providing, Chun stated firmly. Which we're not providing, Webb confirmed. Ambassador Reeves is handling the diplomatic aspects, but there's growing pressure for transparency about human capabilities and intentions. Chun understood the concern. From the perspective of the other galactic species, humanity had revealed capabilities that hadn't been discussed during the initial negotiations. The phantom fleets, the neural linking technology, the biological warfare techniques. All of these represented strategic advantages that could potentially be used against allies as easily as enemies. They're worried we're becoming too much like the Devourers, Chun observed. Can you blame them? Webb asked quietly. We've developed technology that allows humans to operate as a collective organism while maintaining individual consciousness. We've created weapons that study and adapt to alien biology in real time. We've demonstrated the ability to appear and disappear throughout galactic space. From their perspective, we might represent a threat equal to the one we're fighting. Chun considered this carefully. It was a valid concern, and one that could undermine the entire defensive alliance if not addressed properly. But it also represented an opportunity to demonstrate something important about human nature. Open a channel to all GDI members, she commanded. Full transparency protocol. Webb looked surprised. Admiral, that will reveal operational details about every aspect of our strategy. Exactly, Chun replied. We're going to show them the difference between humans and Devourers. The Devourers can't choose to be vulnerable. Their nature doesn't allow it. Humans can choose to be vulnerable because our strength comes from cooperation, not domination. The communication channel opened, and Chun found herself addressing representatives of 47 different species simultaneously. She could see their various forms of attention focusing on her: compound eyes, energy patterns, crystalline matrices, and others she couldn't easily categorize. Honored allies, she began. I'm aware of growing concerns about human capabilities and intentions. I'm therefore implementing full operational transparency regarding all aspects of human anti-devourer strategy. A wave of surprise rippled through the assembled representatives as Chun activated detailed displays showing every aspect of Operation Ghost Dance. The Phantom Fleet compositions, neural link protocols, biological warfare techniques, strategic objectives. Everything was laid bare for examination. This is unprecedented, observed Ambassador Kixnoth of the Corellian Empire. You're revealing tactical capabilities that could be used against you. That's the point, Chun replied. The Devourers can't make that choice because they see every other consciousness as either a resource to be consumed or a threat to be eliminated. Humans can make that choice because we understand that real strength comes from trust, not fear. She gestured to the tactical displays, showing Devourer responses to human attacks. Look at how they're reacting to our operations. They're becoming more defensive, more isolated, more focused on self-preservation. Each engagement teaches them to trust other consciousness less, not more. They're becoming weaker through conflict. The observation was accurate. The Devourers were responding to human harassment by becoming increasingly paranoid and defensive, expending resources on protection rather than growth. Now look at human responses, Chun continued, activating displays showing human fleet coordination. Each engagement teaches us to trust each other more, to coordinate more effectively, to share information more freely. We're becoming stronger through conflict. The ethereal representative pulsed with what might have been understanding. You're demonstrating that cooperation is inherently superior to consumption as a survival strategy. More than that, Chun replied. We're proving it empirically. The Devourers are learning to fear the unknown, while humans are learning to embrace it. They're becoming more like isolated organisms defending themselves, while we're becoming more like a unified organism supporting itself. Ambassador Zurgoth of the Silicon Collective processed this information with mechanical precision. Your transparency regarding tactical capabilities supports your philosophical position, but it It also creates practical vulnerabilities in ongoing operations. Chin smiled. Only if you assume that knowledge of our tactics makes them less effective. Human warfare doesn't depend on secrecy. It depends on adaptability. Even if the Devourers learned every detail of our current strategy, we would simply develop new strategies faster than they could counter them. To prove her point, she activated real-time communication links to Phantom Fleet commanders throughout the galaxy. All units, be advised that full tactical information is now available to all GDI members. Initiate Protocol Delta immediately. Across the galaxy, human forces simultaneously shifted to new tactical patterns that had been prepared but not yet implemented. The change was seamless, coordinated through the neural network, and demonstrated that human strategy was dynamic rather than static. Remarquable, Briatid Ambassador Vextar. Your forces adapted to complete strategic transparency without missing an operational beat. Because that's what humans do, Chen replied. We adapt. We learn. We evolve our approaches constantly. The Devourers are trying to match us strength for strength, but they can't match us change for change. The communication channel fell silent as the assembled representatives considered the implications. Finally, Ambassador Karoth of the Razorwing Legion spoke with something approaching respect. Perhaps we have indeed underestimated your species, Admiral. But the true test remains ahead. The Devourers will not be satisfied with minor skirmishes indefinitely. Eventually, they will force a direct confrontation. Chen's expression grew serious. Which brings us to Phase 3 of our operations. We've taught them to fear the unknown. Now we're going to teach them to fear the known as well. She activated new displays showing mass Devourer formations approaching core galactic systems. The harassment campaign had been successful, but it had also forced the Devourers to abandon their scattered consumption pattern in favor of concentrated assault formations. They're coming to fight us directly, Chen observed. Exactly as we hoped they would. The assembled representatives looked at the massive enemy formations with obvious concern. Even concentrated and defensive, the Devourer fleet remained overwhelmingly powerful. How do you propose to counter 5,000 bioships in direct confrontation? Asked the ethereal representative. Chen's smile was predatory. By showing them that humans don't just hunt persistence prey. Sometimes we hunt other predators. The Kalos system had been chosen as humanity's final battleground for very specific reasons. 5 terrestrial planets, 3 gas giants, and an asteroid belt that stretched across nearly 2 billion kilometers provided the perfect environment for the kind of warfare humans had pioneered. More importantly, the system had been evacuated months earlier, allowing human forces to prepare without risking civilian populations. Admiral Chun stood in the command center of humanity's Spear, her flagship, and the first vessel designed entirely around neural network coordination. Around her, nearly 1,000 human consciousness specialists maintained connections to phantom fleets throughout the system, while their bodies remained safely within the heavily shielded vessel. Devourer main force entering the system, reported Commander Webb, his voice carrying through both conventional communication and the neural link. Sensors indicate 4,700 bioships in primary formation, with approximately 300 scattered support vessels. Chun felt the collective awareness of her forces as they prepared for the largest battle in galactic history. Through the neural network, she could sense the presence of 30,000 human warriors distributed across 1,500 vessels of various sizes. Each ship was more than just a weapons platform. It was a node in a vast intelligence network that could coordinate actions across impossible distances in real time. All Phantom fleets report ready, announced Captain Rodriguez, her consciousness simultaneously coordinating 12 different squadron formations. Fade protocols are active, but Devourer sensors are more sophisticated than we encountered during harassment operations. This was expected. The Devourers had adapted during their journey to Kalos, developing new sensor arrays and detection methods specifically designed to counter human stealth technology. They had learned from their previous encounters and evolved countermeasures. Perfect, Chun said with satisfaction. They've done exactly what we wanted them to do. The statement confused some of the Allied observers who were monitoring the battle from safe distances. Ambassador Kixnatha's voice came through the communication channel with obvious concern. Admiral, your stealth advantage appears to have been neutralized. The Devourers are detecting human vessels much more effectively than in previous engagements. That's the point, Chun replied, activating tactical displays that showed the true scope of human preparation. We wanted them to focus on detection. Every bioship that's been modified for advanced sensor capability is a bioship that's less effective at combat and consumption. The display showed detailed analysis of the approaching Devourer fleet. Nearly 40% of the bioships showed significant modifications from their standard configurations: enhanced sensor arrays, improved communication networks, reinforced defensive structures. All adaptations designed to counter human tactics. They've spent months evolving specifically to fight us, Webb observed with professional admiration. It's actually quite impressive from a biological standpoint, and it's also exactly what persistence hunting is designed to achieve, Chun replied. We've forced them to expend enormous resources adapting to our strategies. Now, we're going to change strategies entirely. She opened communication channels to the Devourer fleet, knowing that their enhanced sensor arrays would pick up the transmission clearly. Devourer forces, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Coalition. You have entered the Kalos system seeking to consume human worlds. This system will be your terminus. Not because we are stronger than you, but because we are different from you. You seek to add our resources to your own. We seek to prove that some things cannot be consumed. The response was immediate and chilling. The Devourer fleet didn't reply with words. They replied with action. The massive bioships began spreading throughout the system in a formation clearly designed to prevent human forces from escaping. It was a perfect envelopment, executed with the precision that came from consuming and learning from 17 different civilizations. They're trying to trap us, observed Captain Martinez, whose Phantom Squadron was positioned near the system's outer edge. Formation analysis suggests they're planning to compress our forces toward the central planets. Chun nodded. They've learned that humans are most dangerous when we can maneuver freely. So they're trying to force us into a static defensive battle where their superior firepower will decide the outcome. Through the neural network, she could feel the collective anticipation of her forces. They had trained for this moment for months, preparing for a battle that would determine whether humanity's approach to warfare could succeed against overwhelming odds. All units, Chun commanded through the neural link, initiate protocol Omega. What happened next would later be studied by military strategists throughout the galaxy for centuries. The human fleet didn't try to avoid the Devourer envelopment, embraced it. Instead of scattering to avoid being trapped, human forces began moving deeper into the system in carefully coordinated formations. Phantom squadrons that had been maintaining stealth protocols suddenly became visible, not because they had been detected, but because they chose to reveal themselves. Phase 1 complete, reported Rodriguez as her forces took up positions around the third planet. Devourer formations are converging as predicted. The Devourers responded exactly as human strategists had anticipated. Seeing human forces concentrating around specific planets, they began their standard consumption approach. Massive bioships moving in for direct assault, while smaller vessels prepared to harvest resources. Biological analysis indicates they're implementing standard consumption protocols, Webb announced. Neural activity patterns suggest they're anticipating resistance equivalent to previous civilizations they've encountered. Chun felt a cold smile cross her face. Then, they're about to learn something new about persistence hunting. Martinez, initiate convergence protocol. Captain Martinez's consciousness expanded through the neural network, taking control of not just her own squadron, but every phantom vessel in the system. For a brief moment, she experienced reality from the perspective of 1,500 different ships simultaneously, an impossible feat for any biological consciousness that hadn't been enhanced through human neural technology. Convergence protocol active, Martinez reported, her voice carrying the subtle harmonics that indicated neural link strain. All vessels responding to collective coordination. The Devourer fleet found itself facing something unprecedented in their entire evolutionary history. Instead of fighting individual ships or even coordinated fleets, they were fighting a single distributed organism that could be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Human vessels began appearing and disappearing throughout the system in patterns that defied conventional tactical analysis. A squadron would engage Devourer forces near one planet, then vanish and reappear near another planet seconds later. But they weren't simply moving, they were learning. Every engagement lasted just long enough to gather specific intelligence about Devourer capabilities. Then human forces would disengage and share that intelligence instantly across the entire network. Within minutes, every human vessel in the system knew the exact capabilities and limitations of every Devourer bioship they faced. They're trying to adapt, observed Captain Thompson as his fighters tested the defensive capabilities of a massive bioship. But they can't adapt faster than we can learn. Every countermeasure they develop is being analyzed and countered in real time. The psychological impact on the Devourer forces was immediate and devastating. They had evolved to fight enemies that learned slowly, that required time to process and implement new tactics. Humans were learning and adapting faster than the Devourer's own biological systems could process information. Devourer fleet cohesion is degrading, Webb reported with excitement. Neural activity patterns indicate increasing confusion and defensive behavior. They're beginning to cluster into smaller groups rather than maintaining coordinated formations. Chun watched with satisfaction as the most feared predators in galactic history began to behave like confused prey. The Devourers were reverting to their most basic instincts, cluster together for protection when faced with an incomprehensible threat. Phase 2, she commanded. Implement persistence protocols. What followed was a demonstration of persistence hunting on an interstellar scale. Human forces didn't try to destroy the Devourer fleet quickly. They began wearing it down systematically. Phantom squadrons would appear, engage Devourer forces just long enough to force defensive responses, then vanish before effective retaliation could occur. Each engagement forced the Devourers to expend energy on defensive measures rather than offensive ones. Each adaptation they made was immediately countered by human tactics that evolved in real time. Within hours, bioships that had been confidently advancing into the system were clustering defensively around the largest members of their fleet. Energy expenditure analysis indicates the Devourer fleet has consumed 40% of its available resources on defensive adaptations, Webb reported. They're beginning to show signs of metabolic stress. Chun felt the collective satisfaction of her forces through the neural network. This was what persistence hunting was designed to achieve. Exhaust the prey's resources until it became vulnerable to direct attack. Devourer command structure is fragmenting, reported Lieutenant Commander Singh as his deep-penetration reconnaissance vessels gathered intelligence from within the enemy formation. Individual bioships are beginning to make independent tactical decisions rather than following collective protocols. The observation was crucial. The Devourer's greatest strength, their ability to operate as a unified organism, was breaking down under the stress of facing an enemy they couldn't understand or predict. All units, prepare for Phase 3, Chin commanded. Target designation protocols are now active. Through the neural network, human forces began sharing targeting data with devastating efficiency. Instead of random harassment, they began focusing their attacks on specific bioships that intelligence analysis had identified as crucial to Devourer command and control functions. The effect was immediate. As key command vessels came under sustained attack, the remaining Devourer forces began losing coordination entirely. Bioships that had moved in perfect formation began clustering around their strongest members, creating defensive formations that made them vulnerable to the kind of concentrated attack they had been trying to avoid. "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez reported with barely contained excitement, "we've got them. The entire fleet is reverting to defensive clustering around approximately 50 command vessels. They've created exactly the kind of concentrated targets that conventional weapons can engage effectively." Chun opened communication channels to the Allied fleets that had been waiting at the edge of the system. "All GDI forces, this is Admiral Chun. Execute final phase protocols. Targets are designated and prioritized for conventional engagement." The Allied fleets that entered the Kowloon system found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything they had expected. Instead of the coordinated, aggressive Devourer forces that had consumed 17 civilizations, they faced a confused, exhausted, and defensively clustered enemy that had been systematically worn down by human persistence tactics. The Battle of Convergence lasted another 6 hours, but its outcome had been decided in the first 30 minutes. Human forces had successfully transformed the galaxy's most feared predators into vulnerable prey, allowing conventional military forces to engage them on advantageous terms. When the last Devourer bio ship fell silent, Admiral Chun felt the collective exhaustion and triumph of her forces through the neural network. They had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had defeated an enemy that had never been defeated. But, more importantly, they had done it in a way that proved intelligence could triumph over instinct, cooperation over consumption, and adaptation over domination. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. 3 months after the Battle of Convergence, Ambassador Helena Reeves stood once again before the Galactic Council, but the chamber that greeted her was transformed. Where once there had been condescending amusement, now there was respectful attention. Where once there had been dismissive gestures, now there was careful consideration of every word she spoke. The change wasn't just in their attitudes. It was in their posture, their seating arrangements, their very approach to galactic governance. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had restructured itself to accommodate a species they had initially considered barely worthy of membership. "The final casualty reports have been compiled," Helena announced, activating holographic displays that showed the aftermath of humanity's campaign against the Devourers. Total Devourer forces eliminated: 4,737 bioships, representing the complete destruction of their invasion fleet and approximately 60% of their total galactic presence. A murmur of amazement rippled through the chamber. These numbers represented the most decisive military victory in galactic history. Not just a successful defense, but the near elimination of a threat that had seemed unstoppable. Allied casualties, Helena continued. Total 43 vessels across all species, with most losses attributed to accidents during the rapid redeployment phase rather than enemy action. Ambassador Kixnoth of the Cruellian Empire rose slowly, his massive form somehow managing to convey humility. "Ambassador Reeves, the Cruellian people wish to formally acknowledge that our initial assessment of human military capabilities was inadequate." Helena smiled diplomatically. "Your initial skepticism was understandable, Ambassador. Human warfare methods are quite different from traditional galactic approaches." "Different is an understatement," observed Ambassador Vextar, his 4 lungs working to produce what might have been laughter. "Your species has fundamentally altered our understanding of what warfare can achieve. The Devourers didn't just lose a battle. They were systematically, psychologically dismantled before conventional weapons were ever deployed." The observation was accurate. Post-battle analysis had revealed that human persistence tactics had achieved something unprecedented. They had induced evolutionary regression in an entire species. The Devourers, faced with threats they couldn't understand or adapt to quickly enough, had reverted to increasingly primitive behavioral patterns until they became vulnerable to conventional attack. The neural network technology alone represents a paradigm shift, added the ethereal representative, its energy patterns suggesting deep contemplation. Your species has achieved true collective intelligence while maintaining individual consciousness. This should not be possible according to our understanding of biological and technological limitations. Helena nodded acknowledgement. Human neural architecture appears to be uniquely suited for distributed consciousness applications. We've been unknowingly training for this capability for millennia through our entertainment culture, social structures, and collaborative approaches to problem solving. What are humanity's intentions regarding this technology? Asked Ambassador Zurgoth with mechanical precision. The capability to coordinate thousands of vessels as a single intelligence network has obvious implications beyond military applications. This was the question Helena had been expecting and preparing for. In the months since the battle, several species had expressed concerns about human intentions now that their true capabilities had been revealed. The fear was understandable. Any technology powerful enough to defeat the Devourers was powerful enough to threaten the existing galactic order. Humanity has no interest in galactic domination, Helena stated firmly. Our neural network technology is being made available for peaceful applications through the Galactic Science Consortium. Full technical specifications and training protocols are being shared with any species that wishes to develop similar capabilities. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. Once again, humanity was voluntarily revealing capabilities that could be used against them, demonstrating their commitment to cooperation rather than domination. You're sharing military technology with potential enemies, observed Ambassador Karath of the Razorwing Legion, though his tone carried respect rather than accusation. We're sharing human technology with galactic allies, Helena corrected gently. The distinction matters. Humans believe that strength shared is strength multiplied, not strength diminished. Admiral Chen's voice joined the discussion through the communication link from Human Command. Ambassador Karath raises a valid concern. Human neural network technology could theoretically be used to coordinate attacks against human forces. However, our strategic analysis indicates this would be both impractical and unnecessary. She activated tactical displays showing the current disposition of human forces throughout the galaxy. Human defense doctrine has evolved beyond the need for secrecy. Our strategies depend on adaptability, not concealment. Even if every aspect of our current military capability was known to potential enemies, we would simply develop new capabilities faster than they could be countered. The statement wasn't boastful. It was a simple statement of fact that had been proven during the Devourer campaign. Human forces had operated under complete tactical transparency during the final phases of the battle, and this transparency had enhanced rather than diminished their effectiveness. The real question, Chun continued, is what role humanity should play in the post-Devourer galaxy. The threat that united us has been eliminated, but the technologies and strategies developed during the campaign have implications far beyond military applications. Ambassador Reeves highlighted new displays showing the broader impact of human innovations. Neural network technology was already being adapted for scientific research, allowing unprecedented collaboration between species with vastly different cognitive approaches. Distributed intelligence systems were revolutionizing resource management and environmental planning across multiple worlds. Humanity proposes the establishment of a cooperative development initiative, Helena announced. A formal framework for sharing not just human innovations, but for developing new technologies and strategies that build on the collaborative approaches we've pioneered. You're proposing to restructure galactic civilization itself. Observe the ethereal representative with what might have been awe. We're proposing to improve it, Helena replied. The old model, isolated species competing for resources and influence, made us vulnerable to threats like the Devourers. A new model based on cooperation and shared intelligence could make such threats impossible. The proposal represented the logical extension of everything humanity had demonstrated during the war. Just as they had turned military cooperation into an art form, they were now proposing to turn galactic civilization into a collaborative organism. The implications are staggering. breathed Ambassador Vextar. Shared intelligence networks could eliminate communication barriers between species. Collaborative resource management could end scarcity-based conflicts. Distributed decision-making could make galactic governance more responsive and effective. It could also eliminate the independence and autonomy that define individual species, warned Ambassador Zergoth. The risk of collective homogenization is significant. Helena had anticipated this concern as well. Human neural network technology specifically preserves individual consciousness within collective frameworks. The goal isn't to make everyone think alike. It's to allow everyone to think together when necessary while maintaining their unique perspectives and capabilities. To demonstrate the point, she activated a live connection to human research teams throughout the galaxy. Suddenly, the chamber was filled with the controlled chaos of dozens of different research projects proceeding simultaneously: xenobiology studies, stellar engineering projects, cultural exchange programs, and others. Each project maintains its own identity and objectives, Helena explained as the connection stabilized. But when one team discovers something relevant to another team's work, that information is shared instantly across the entire network. Knowledge is preserved and enhanced, not homogenized. The demonstration had a profound impact on the assembled delegates. They were witnessing true collaborative intelligence in action, individual minds working together without losing their individual characteristics. The Devourers represented one extreme. Admiral Chun observed through the communication link. Complete absorption of individual consciousness into a collective organism. The traditional galactic model represents the opposite extreme. Complete isolation of individual consciousness from collective benefit. Humanity offers a middle path, voluntary cooperation that enhances rather than eliminates individual capability. Ambassador Kixnoth stood again, his massive form somehow conveying deep thought. The Cruellian Empire formally endorses the Cooperative Development Initiative. Our warrior culture has always valued strength, and we now understand that true strength comes from unity rather than domination. One by one, other delegates voiced their support for the human proposal. Not unanimous agreement. Several species remained concerned about the implications of such fundamental change, but clear majority support for exploring new forms of galactic cooperation. There is one final matter that requires discussion, Helena said as the formal voting concluded. The remaining Devourer populations. The chamber fell silent. Long-range reconnaissance had confirmed that while the invasion fleet had been completely destroyed, significant Devourer populations remained in distant regions of the galaxy. These surviving groups represented potential future threats, but they also represented something else, an opportunity to prove that cooperation could succeed where consumption had failed. Human xenobiology teams have been studying captured Devourer specimens, Admiral Chin reported, activating new displays. We've discovered something remarkable. The Devourer's consumption-based behavior isn't purely biological. It includes significant learned components. In other words, they aren't inherently evil. They're inherently adaptable. The implications were staggering. If the Devourers could learn to cooperate rather than consume, they could potentially become part of galactic civilization rather than its greatest threat. You're proposing to rehabilitate the Devourers? Asked Ambassador Karoth with obvious amazement. We're proposing to give them the same choice we've given every other species in the galaxy, Helena replied. The opportunity to learn that cooperation produces better results than consumption. The proposal was audacious beyond comprehension. The galaxy's most feared predators could potentially be transformed into its newest allies through the application of the same collaborative principles that had defeated them. The risk is enormous. Observe the ethereal representative. If rehabilitation efforts fail, we could face a Devourer resurgence with knowledge of our capabilities and strategies. The potential benefit is equally enormous, Chen countered. If rehabilitation succeeds, we gain not just new allies, but proof that any species can choose cooperation over domination. The psychological impact would make future threats like the Devourers virtually impossible. The debate that followed would later be remembered as one of the most important discussions in galactic history. For hours, delegates argued about the wisdom of attempting to rehabilitate humanity's former enemies. The discussion revealed deep philosophical differences about the nature of consciousness, cooperation, and civilization itself. In the end, the decision was unanimous. The attempt would be made, not because it was safe, but because it represented the ultimate test of the cooperative principles humanity had introduced to the galaxy. The Cooperative Development Initiative will include provisions for Devourer rehabilitation efforts, Helena announced as the session concluded. Voluntary participation only, extensive safeguards, and complete transparency regarding all aspects of the program. As delegates filed out of the chamber, Ambassador Kixnoth approached Helena directly. The massive Corellian warrior studied her with compound eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. "Human," he said quietly, "3 months ago, we laughed at your species because you seemed too weak to matter. Today, we follow your leadership because you've proven that true strength has nothing to do with physical power." Helena smiled. "That's what persistence hunting teaches you, Ambassador. The strongest prey isn't necessarily the one with the biggest claws or the thickest hide. Sometimes it's the one that refuses to give up, that finds new ways to survive and thrive no matter what challenges it faces." And sometimes, Kixnoth replied with what might have been admiration, "The hunter becomes the teacher." As Helena left the chamber, she reflected on how much had changed since humanity's first petition to join the Galactic Defense Initiative. They had come seeking acceptance as junior partners in someone else's war. They were leaving as architects of a new form of civilization. The galaxy had stopped laughing at humanity. Instead, it was learning to dream alongside them, learning that the soft, fragile species from a minor world had something to offer that no amount of physical strength or advanced technology could provide. They had offered hope that cooperation could triumph over competition, that intelligence could overcome instinct, and that the weakest could become the strongest simply by refusing to accept that weakness was permanent. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating the Devourers. It was proving that there was always another way to solve any problem, if you were willing to think differently enough to find it. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Helena realized with deep satisfaction, was exactly the point.